it's a pleasure to meet you and talk about the technique of this film, because I thought you had an excellent ratio between technology and emotions.
Oh, thank you.
What was the biggest challenge for you?
You know, the hardest part was probably, there were two really hard parts. I wanted to push the reality as far as possible because I felt that would heighten the emotion. If the illusion of it could be complete, then you wouldn't be questioning whether or not they were CG or whether or not it was real.
Yeah.
You just kind of submit to the experience. So I wanted to push the photo reality as far as possible, which meant shooting in environments that weren't really friendly to shoot in. And we took this technology to places that had never been taken before. We were shooting in the woods, in the freezing cold, in the rain, and it all added to the level of reality, but it was a very hard shoot because of it. And then the other part that was very hard was the editing, because you actually don't have your shots until very late. So what's driving you is the emotion, because what you're doing is you're using the performances of Andy Serkis, of Toby Kebbell, of your performers, and you're using that to craft the cut. But you're using shots that actually aren't the final shots. I'm seeing, basically for almost a year, you're watching a cut of the movie that's Andy Serkis wearing a camera on his head and dots on his face, and you're kind of suspending sort of your disbelief so that you can get past it and respond to the emotion. The shots only start coming in very, very late, and then you actually have to re-edit the movie again, and you're building all of those shots literally performance by performance, not just in the foreground, but in the background. Even all of the apes that are all around them, they're all based on performances, and it's a painstaking process, and that was probably the hardest part of all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For us, to our enjoyment, it looks totally real.
Yeah.
And at no point, if I didn't know that there was such thing as visual effects, would I have doubted that these look real.
That's great.
So does that mean that now with the right amount of skill and craft, everything can look real on camera?
I think
on screen?
I think that the effects are getting, I think this is a new high watermark in terms of the realism, and I think that, here's the crazy thing, as we were finishing, they had to rebuild their pipeline just to do the effects that we were doing. Even the idea of water dripping on Caesar's face at the beginning of the movie was something they only really fully worked out, even though they were intending to do it throughout the whole movie, in the last 8 weeks. So suddenly it was like, oh yes, now we can have water dripping on his face, and we're, oh good, now we can final that shot. And what was crazy is in the process of making this movie, they told me that because of the rebuilding of the pipeline, that the effects next time would be so much better. And I thought, that's incredible, because these are the most
amazing
realistic effects I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think that as the technology gets more and more convincing, it will enable exploration in these worlds to feel more and more emotional and more real.
Well, because the performances are kind of competing with the visual effects now, is it very important to have extremely skilled actors?
That's the whole key. I mean, the thing about performance capture is there's no technical side of what's going on from the actors at all. What it is performance. You're capturing a performance. And so we cast, I mean, obviously what we had, the secret weapon that we had was a great actor, Andy Serkis. And one of the things we wanted to do was, because I wanted to focus on the apes and make this an ape point of view movie, the idea was to make sure that the world around him was filled with great actors. And so Toby Kebbell and Judy Greer, and then our other returning performers like Terry Notary and Karen Carnival, they're all amazing actors. And the great thing about performance capture is that what drives it is performance. And so even though this movie has got grand spectacle, at the end of the day, it's an intimate, emotional piece. And it's really about creating that environment with the actors.
Do you think Andy's a bit one of a kind?
Well, I think that, I mean, Andy's a bit one of a kind because he's amazing, but what's so interesting is that people wonder, oh, is it some great technical thing he's doing? It's actually nothing technical. It's all his performance. And
it's true.
The way in which he's one of a kind is he's one of the best actors I've ever worked with. He's amazing. And he's such a soulful, beautiful, generous person. And so it was an amazing experience. I would want to work with him forever. I just think he's great.
Yeah, he's great. He's such a nice guy as well. So
he is.
It's
He's
a double
sweetheart.
combination of
It's
everything.
amazing. I mean, it's so funny because in Rise, he has there's this moment where he screams no in the habitat, and it's sort of breathtaking, and he really has this incredible weight. And it made me wonder, because I'd never met him, I was like, wait, is he a ferocious person? Is he this and that? And because he expresses this power. And then you meet him, and he's the gentlest, kindest person.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you spoke about soulfulness, and I think it's strange for me to say that, but it does feel like a very soulful film.
Oh,
I think
thank you.
your intention was to take out the emotion out of it.
Well, that was the most important
thing.
thing.
Albeit a sci-fi film.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I found so exciting in Rise was that I'd never had that level of emotional identification with a CG character. And the idea of re-entering the world of Planet of the Apes by being in the inner lives, the emotional lives of the apes, I thought was breathtaking. And so, to me, the opportunity here was to take this story and get as much emotion out of it as possible. I mean, really, it's a family story. It's a story about, I mean, you know, not being grandiose about it, we sort of imagine it as like a kind of Godfather with apes, which really what The Godfather is a kind of Shakespearean form gangster movie, which is about a father and his sons. And we wanted this movie to be about family. We wanted it to be an exploration of our relationship to violence and told against the intimate stakes of your family. And so it was meant to be a very emotional story.
And the choices that you make every day.
Absolutely.
So do you still have appetite for more? I mean, obviously there is opening to more.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing is that I've actually, what was exciting was when we showed the studio the film, very early on, back when it was literally just, you know, Andy Serkis and all of our 8 performers still just wearing their mocap equipment, no effects.
Yeah.
The studio could already see what the movie was because the actors were so good and they saw how emotional it was and they said, wow, we'd like you to continue. We want you to do more of this. And what's so exciting is that emotional life of those characters is incredibly intriguing to me. And so I'm excited to tell the next chapter of the story.